Greetings, chess fans. My name is Arturs Neiksans. I'm the leading Latvian chess grandmaster, and I'm back with a fresh video with a game that I played last weekend in France. I was playing in French Team Chess Championships, second division by strength. It's called National 1 for my team, Saint-Quentin. This video is part of the playlist Inside the Mind of a Chess Grandmaster. My opponent was Andrei Terekhov, a FIDE master. I think originally he's from St. Petersburg, Russia, but resides in France. His rating is 2271. I was playing with a black color. My opponent opened up with d4, and I'm thinking, is this the day when I want to play Can, the Dutch defense, the Leningrad variation? Well, I don't really mind it, but it was a Sunday morning game, 10 a.m. I had slept pretty poorly. We just celebrated our ascension to the highest division, World Top 16 the previous evening. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna just play solid and see what happens. I did some very minor prep, and I noticed that my opponent likes to play some Catalan positions, but he avoids the c4 move. So his typical response would be like knight f3, d5. He wouldn't play c4. I suppose he was feeling quite uncomfortable in some queen's gambit accepted positions. So he would play g3, and I figured out, I could play bishop f5, I could play c6, I could play h6 and e6, and have a very solid position. And there comes the first surprise. He played c4. And I was thinking, wait, but this is not normally what you play, right? Normally you don't play c4. So I thought, okay, no problem. I'm going to play e6. And I recall that there were some games that where he was choosing the Nimzo with knight c3. And now he plays g3. Again, very quickly. And I was thinking, have you prepared for this game? Because for my opponent, not only the opponent for the team, they already had no chance to qualify for anything else or fight for the top 3. Also, they're not in the fear to get demoted to the next division. And I was a bit surprised that he has prepped some lines, but okay, still being a professional and everything. So I play d5, and after bishop g2, I'm thinking, so if the guy doesn't play c4, and there's basically no gains for him with queen's gambit accepted, I gotta take it. I gotta play on the fears of my opponent where he feels most uncomfortable. And immediately he responded with queen a4 check. So I was thinking, what's the continuation here? Now, naturally, I want to play knight e7. That's the first thing I want to do. Knight e7. For example, he wins the pawn. I want to play a6. And let's say if white plays knight f3, I play b5, I play bishop b7, and eventually I push c5. Have an equal symmetrical pawn structure. And then I start to have some doubts. What if after a6 he plays some other move, like a4? I cannot play b5, and rook b8 doesn't feel right. I would be opening up the a file on the long h1 a8 diagonal. So what do I do after a4? For example, I think I have to play c5. And let's say he plays something else, like, I don't know, d takes on c5. And I take with the bishop on c5, he plays knight f3, and castles, and I equalize the game. How am I going to win this? Right? It's very symmetrical, and for whites, it's very easy to play. So I'm thinking, how do I get a more complex battle after this queen a4? So I decide to play bishop d7 and bishop c6. So the big idea is that if he wants to equalize, trade off some pieces, I take with the knight, the pawn on d4 now is being hit, and after knight f3, I play queen d5. That's the big idea. If he takes it, if he doesn't take, I play a long castle. If he takes it, he takes on d5, knight c3, bishop b4. And along the lines, I was thinking, I wouldn't mind to get something like this. A slightly unbalanced position, knight against the bishop, maybe trick the guy in the endgame. I'm definitely not worse. So I was pretty happy to go here if this would have arisen. He played, of course, knight f3. And I knew for a fact that you have to play bishop d5, hit the queen. Let's say he retreats somewhere For example, on d3 or c2, maybe it doesn't matter. Let's say here he wants to play knight c3. Again, I play bishop e4. And if he plays queen d1, I could play c5, knight c3, bishop c6. And again, I equalize the game. How do I win? Again, that's the question. Let's say he just takes a short castle, and then what? Short castle, knight e7, there's massive trades incoming. How do I win this? So I was thinking it's probably not good enough. So I decided to play knight e7. A bit complicated matters. And maybe now in some lines I want to play bishop d6 and e5 to get a slightly unbalanced pawn structure. So he went here, I went bishop d6, castles, castles, all of this is pretty easy. And of course I have to watch out for the move e4. So what I had planned is that he probably cannot play queen e3 immediately. I had anticipated that most likely I will have the move e5. So if he takes it like a couple of times, actually I should have calculated this a bit more carefully, like here, takes. Not sure actually I like this, but I think I was looking at some lines along the way. Of course, there's knight f7 intermezzo, where I get 3 pawns against 2 at the queen side, and chances to fight for something in the long run. So I was not yet fully decided what I'm going to do. Actually, I think I can make maybe even some quiet move here first. Wait, I think I remember. I think there was also this line. Knight e5, e4, takes, and e5. Try to unbalance things, and after d5, knight c5, bishop d7, queen is hit, and I get a fight. So he played rook d1, and now, yeah, I pretty much automatically play queen e7, which basically improves the odds to play e5, and for some reason, I didn't really pay here a lot of attention. I should have played knight e5, which was one of my original ideas, so he cannot play e4, I'm gonna take on c3, the pawn is under attack. And if he goes here, I get to play some Dutch. Like f5, I'm controlling these squares. Let's say he would take it, and take it looks like a perfect Stonewall position to me, and I'm doing something at the king side. So I'm nicely controlling the center. But I play queen e7, which was based on, not miscalculation, I just didn't understand the position because I had basically no experience in this line. I thought that my opponent's gonna go here, and I'm gonna figure it out. Like, one of my original ideas was to play e5, originally. And again, if he plays d takes on e5, knight e5, knight e5, bishop g2, king g2, bishop e5, it's quite equalish, but at least I have pawn disbalance in the position. So obviously I was thinking, what if he plays d5? It's my bishop. I will play knight c5, he goes here, I play bishop d7, I want to play a5, secure the knight on c5, he plays b4, here he plays a3, and I try to understand if I like this. I decided I don't like it. So how do I improve my position before I play e5? So I thought I'm gonna play a5, which I thought is weird. To be honest, I felt it's weird, and I should have probably listened to my gut instinct that it's a weird move. But the big idea is that after e4, e5, d5, I get to play knight c5, bishop d7, and now no longer he plays b4, which probably, honestly, is really wishful thinking. And what I should have done is immediately stop white c4 by playing bishop b4. I mean, I saw this move, but let's say even after a3 and the very simple queen c3, I'm going to win this again. Like, the best case scenario, I'm going to play c5, he's going to trade the pawns, he's going to have up bishop pair in a symmetrical pawn structure, and for me, pushing e5 feels like a dream. Because again, I'm opening up the position for his two bishops. So I thought I'm definitely worse here, and I'd have no real chances to unbalance the game. So the real mistake was here, playing queen e7. So I played here, now I played a5, and after he played e4, I just realized, wait a second. He doesn't have to play d5. He doesn't have to take on e5. What if he reinforces on the threat of d5 by removing the queen, either here or e2 on c2? So this is what happened. He played queen e2, and I was thinking, what I'm doing? What I am doing, because now this is a massive threat. I don't have the intermezzo move knight c5. And if I take here, there's knight e4. This is terrible. My queen on e7 is perfectly misplaced. I also was thinking here, instead of a5, that I could have played a6 with some future ideas of b5, b4 to push away the knight. He definitely would play here. And after d5, I consider a pawn sacrifice. Like takes, and if he plays queen b5, I play knight e4, he takes the pawn on b7, I have some activity. But of course, he just plays knight h4. Threatens to go here, and after g6, he collects the pawn. Now the pawn on e4 is defended, and just much worse. So I saw this, so that's why I didn't play a6. I just felt that I'm just gonna lose a pawn at least. So I played a5, and after queen e2, I realized I'm in big trouble. All right, now what? I have to survive. So the only move to survive is to play knight b6, so that after d5, I have bishop d7. Of course, he took an e5, he took an e5 again, and I knew I'm in big trouble because my opponent has the center, he has the pawn majority. At the king side, he has the bishops, and I have a pretty weird knight on b6. The knight on f6 also doesn't do much. I have some pressure against the pawn on e4, but I knew this is much worse. And here, white could have played bishop f4 and rook e1 with the idea to rearrange the pieces and eventually look for some e5 ideas. But he didn't do that. He played bishop e3 with some tricks like I could take on e4, I'm going to lose a piece eventually, some bishop d4 intermezzo moves at some point. So I went here, and now my opponent started to misplay. So what he should have done is advance the central pawns, which by the way was a pretty easy plan. Like he could have played f4, I go here, he kills the knight on b6 and pushes e5. It's as easy as it gets, really. So even though I'm not threatening, he's not really threatening to take on f6 immediately, I have difficulties to make the move. And probably I have to like take it and play knight g4, but there's rook d6 and some lines incoming. Maybe not immediately like h3 and here, and even for domination. I'm just in a big trouble. It feels like I'm playing down a pawn. So luckily for me, he did not find it. He played bishop d4, which I felt was pretty weird. And I was fully expecting he's going to play something like f3, lock the center, then maybe try to go to the endgame, trade the queens, and activate the last square bishop, something like bishop f1 or bishop h3. Now this is something how I was playing myself from the white's perspective in similar pawn structures, so I thought I'm going to play h5, h4, organize some counterplay, and maybe get this knight to f8 somehow and do my best. But here, Terekhov with white, he played rook e1. And suddenly after knight a4, I felt I'm given a chance. And by the way, this is something I kept reminding myself. And this is something that I'm always telling to my students. If you misplay your position in the opening, remember, your opponent will give you a chance. If you play against Magnus Carlsen, he's not going to give you any chances. He's going to convert it and you're not going to feel any pain. You're going to play against the GM. He's going to give you maybe, most of the time, half a chance somewhere. You're going to play against, let's say, a FIDE master. He's going to give you a full chance. You're playing against somebody even lower, he's going to give you several chances. So that's why it's very important not to feel depressed and keep fighting. Try to complicate matters, because if your opponent has a bit lower rating, it means he probably is gonna give you a chance somewhere. I mean, it's not guaranteed, but at least you give you some hope. And this is what happened in the game. So now suddenly I'm back in the game, and if he takes on a4, I play bishop here, he plays f3, he needs to protect the pawn, I play h5, and I was like, okay, here we go. I'm definitely worse, but not a lot. Not a lot, like there's maybe a4 at the queen side, and I feel like I managed to trade my terrible knight on b6. He played queen c2, which I thought originally was pretty smart, so he hit the knight. And after knight c3, he wants to play queen c3. I supposedly cannot win the pawn on e4 because of the pin, and white just gonna play moves like f3, bishop f1, bishop c4. Looks very logical. But I don't have to take it. So I play queen c4. And suddenly, I felt there's my chance. Because he cannot easily defend the bishop. Bishop f6, by the way, which happened in the game, I'm not afraid, because I'm not afraid of the double pawns. I'm more afraid of the ducks with bishop that white had. And if white will play like rook d1, I thought I can take on c3. If he takes with a bishop, I collect the pawn on e4. It's just there, like takes, takes, and takes. I'm definitely not risking here anything. At least I thought so. And if he takes with a pawn, I thought in the worst case, I can attack the queen. And after queen d3, I thought I can figure it out. Do I want to take the pawn or not? I was not yet sure. Looks a bit risky, like rook a1 and queen c2. It feels like I'm alive, I'm keeping my pawn. But I had my minimal program. If he goes here, at least I get to take it here and play some sort of, what was it? I already don't remember. I think it was like bishop c6. Bishop c6 or even knight g4. I don't remember what I had decided here. Here, f3, here. Maybe I'm slightly worse, but I have some counterplay at the queen side. Think about the knight, knight e7, or my arrows, knight e7, knight e5, knight c4. If I get to do that, I think I'm okay. So I didn't really calculate this very deeply. And after queen c4, he decided to take on f6 and play rook e3. Now, I knew for a fact I'm not worse anymore. I mean, like I already said, these pawns don't really matter. He cannot exploit it. The queen on c2 is pinned. He cannot play b3, but now he wants to play b3. Protecting the knight on c3, he wants to play b3 and win the piece. So I took it, I play queen e6. And I thought, he has to play e5. I mean, he has to play e5, because definitely he's no longer doing anything here. He's not trying anything. The pawn on e4 is an easy target, so he has to get rid of the weakness. And I thought, I'm going to take it. If I take the pawn on e5, he takes on c7. It's basically a symmetrical pawn structure on the board. I thought I'm going to give him a check. Rook f3 feels quite risky for white, even though the engine says it's the best move. I thought he goes here. I take it, rook e8, and, you know, I was thinking maybe I have some ideas like rook e2 or rook e1, but he just plays rook c8. And rook e1 is not a threat because of the pin right here, and it's just a draw. So I didn't find anything I can do it against it. Here, there's no chance for me to avoid this. Like, I was looking at this line right now, like he can play e5, but okay, I have no choice. I have to go here and hope that he's not going to do it. And he played a3. I suppose he wanted to play like rook d1 or rook e1. And now after rook d8, I thought again, he probably can play e5. But now this move is a bit more difficult to make compared to the previous position. Because, like, it's the logic. He didn't play e5 in the previous move. And now probably he's not going to do it again. I mean, I could have stopped it, most likely. Make some quieter move, like rook e7. But I didn't really see e5 as a threat. So I play here. And now suddenly he is in, he has some issues here. Because the pawn on e4 might be under attack. And actually what was after rook d1? Not sure I remember. Rook d1 was giving him, rook d1 was takes, takes, and f5. Yeah, that's the line I saw. So suddenly after f5, he cannot take it. There's queen e1 check, takes. Here, bishop f1, and after bishop e5, I'm just winning a piece. So this idea of playing f5 was the critical idea. I'm not even winning the pawn by the bishop, but I'm just playing f5 and threatening to take it. So he cannot play rook d1, and I think this is what he noticed. That's why he played a3 in the first place. Now he played rook e1. I played rook d4. He played rook d3. And here I really initially wanted to go rook d1. Because there was an idea, let me try to remember, what was the idea that I calculated? There were some tricks. I don't remember, but yeah, the big idea doesn't work. He can take it here on d4 and hit my rook on d4 and the pawn on a5. There was something, I found a line where supposedly I'm doing fantastic. I think I remember, it was like takes, takes, and rook d1, here. This idea. So then I play bishop e4 and queen e4. And I keep my extra pawn. So he cannot take on c7. He cannot trade the queens. He's down a pawn. So what happened is I decided to take on d3. Now I centralize my queen. Protect the pawn. Protect the... hit the pawn on b2. Threaten with f5. And I felt I'm definitely in charge. He played queen d2. Which I anticipated. I played f5. f4 gives nothing. There's a check. I collect a pawn on e4. I'm just up a pawn. He played f3. By the way, there's also a queen g5 check. I would just play king h8, queen h5. And to be honest, in the game, I thought I can just take it here and collect the pawn on b2. And then go back queen g7. I thought I'm doing fantastic. But here, the engine says you can even play f6. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would have figured it out. Protect the pawn on e4 is going nowhere. F takes on e4 is a big threat. The pawn on b2 remains under attack. So f6, by the way, is a very, very easy move. He played f3. I took it. And I felt like I haven't really had such a great position in this game. And it was a time scramble approaching. I think I had already 5 minutes with 11 moves to make to reach the next time control, to get extra half an hour on the clock. And I just didn't trust the 5. I felt I'm exposing my position a bit too much. Because if he plays queen g5, I go here. He plays rook f1. And I should be very careful here. Like if I take it on e4, there's rook f8 check. And I lose the queen. And if I play bishop e4, he probably could do the same. Like bishop e4, again, I could take with f-pawn, queen e4, he at least has queen f5. Or even queen f6 maybe with perpetual. So I cannot do that. And apparently here the engine says I could give a check and take it. And that there is nothing. Like after rook f7, there's bishop d5, and the engine says, chill. You're good. I had very few minutes to calculate this precisely. I didn't see that. So I decided to play rook e6. And that's a move actually I would later regret a bit. I thought that if I was a bit smarter, I should have played moves like king g7, h6, slowly improve the position, because those are also the moves that are very difficult for my opponent to anticipate. He also was in a time scramble. He had like 3 minutes left. I had like 5 minutes maybe. And he's calculating f5, he's calculating some 4c moves. And that's why moves like king g7 and h6, which just improve your position, they're very difficult to predict. Anyway, I played rook e6 because I want to take over the d file, go after the queen. Of course, he went for the activity, rook d6. And I only anticipated queen f2, to be honest. I thought he wants to attack the pawn. I thought I'm going to go here. So I want to trade the queens, target the pawn. And I think he's having some issues here. I saw he can play e5. I would trade the queens. And I thought at least I can play maybe rook e6, make this pawn a target, or check. And maybe I can go to the same game. But actually, I think his king is just in time to get on d4 to protect the pawn on e5. So I wasn't really concerned about all of this. Like, I thought I'm still pressing. And he played queen f4. And now I realized, oh, wait. It's actually not so simple. Because my original plan was that I'm going to take it. He's definitely going to take with a pawn. And I thought I'm going to somehow exploit these pawns. Like, they're not strong, they're actually weak. And I thought if I play rook d2, he goes here. I go here, he goes here. I might go rook d4. He could have played rook e1, I play rook d2 back, and that's a weakness. So he plays e5. And I was trying to calculate some lines. I mean, do I press here anything? Like takes here, king of 3 maybe here, and maybe he sacks the pawn or even plays here. So again, maybe I can go to the pawn endgame with king g6. And I have to make all of these calculations in a very, very short time frame. Make a big decision. I was like, oh, wait, maybe I cannot do that. So I decided to retreat. Actually, here the engine says I should have done it and just calmly play king f8. The point is, white has difficulties to make a move. I think e5 is most likely dropping something. Like after e5, I can play here, rook f2. Probably here. And if he plays king f1, I take it, and we reach the same position. And I get the king on f5, and I have a pawn majority at the queen side, and these pawns are static, they're dropping. I think so, at least. Yeah, it looks very logical. So I just didn't have the time to calculate this so carefully, like king f8, and white has difficulties to make the next move. Like the best move is rook f2, maybe. He needs to protect the pawn. I give a check. I play rook d3. He has to go here again, rook b3, and somehow I'm dominating his position. Yeah, like king e7, and these are targets. He cannot easily activate a king. Maybe go here. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. So I played queen e7, and he played e5. Yeah, and I knew, okay, my advantage is gone. Whatever I had. So after rook e6, I finally decided to do the final trick. After the take it, he gave me a check. I decided to make a trap. So I play king f8. I knew he's going to give a check on c8, king g7, and without thinking, my opponent grabbed the pawn. And I think this essentially is the difference between the GM and the FM. Because, at least I think so, because the GMs, more than anybody else, feel the danger of the position. And what my opponent did not understand, like he grabbed the pawn on b7, he had like maybe 1 minute on the clock, but there was no debate even about it. That I have to win back the pawn on e5, and then he has the better pawn structure, and there's no risk for him, and there's no mate for him. That's what he thought. But actually, after queen c5 check and queen e5, I suddenly dominate his queen. And I'm threatening with rook c1 check to capture the queen. And he's in sudden real trouble. So the correct move here after queen c8, king g7 was not that. Anything else, like maybe give a check here after rook g6, play queen d4, and white can never ever lose this. Like normally the pawn in e5 is easily protected. Of course I would play this on, but objectively the position is just equal. So he grabbed the pawn, I gave a check, and I play queen d5. And now he is essentially playing without the queen. Again, this is the time scramble. We still have to make 3 moves each. He played queen a7, trying to get the queen to the game, back to the game. I'll collect the pawn, make sure the queen cannot join it. Again, in the time scramble, it was very difficult for him to play. Like, if he plays rook f1, you need to watch out for rook c2. Again, no time to include a queen in the game. And let's say rook f2, you have to be careful of some like checks here, and maybe some pawn endgames, or king g2 and rook goes here, and queen h1. So it was very difficult for him to find the correct move. So he went back, trying to escape with the queen. I don't let him. He played queen a7, making the 40th move, reaching the next time control. So what I do, I give a check. He goes here, and rook c5 shut the queen again from the game. Now we have a material balance, extra half an hour on the clock, and he plays b4 after some thought. Now, what to do here? My gut instinct told me one thing. There is something. I cannot explain it, but I feel there's something, and I have half a time on the clock to figure it out. So I'm thinking, if I play queen d4 check, so he gonna play king g2 or rook f2, there's gonna be a discovered check. The queen on a7 is hanging. Let's say he goes here, I give a check. He goes here, I give a check. He's there. Maybe I play at some point queen e2 with some rook c2 ideas. So he could probably even play king g1, because after rook c2, rook f2, the queen on a7 defends the rook. But I thought, in the worst case, after queen e2, he can just take on f7 and play queen c5. And there's no mate. And this queen g1 maneuver was always there. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the win. And so I was thinking, okay, maybe I start with rook c2. And he goes here. And again, you see the queen protects the rook. And I can give some sort of a check. With same ideas of rook c1, maybe if he plays king g2. And again, he goes here. And I go here. He plays here. And where's the win? And I was thinking, can I go for some pawn endgame? Maybe can I do it like this? Takes, and rook c2 and here. And a check here, and I try to calculate this line. Can I win the pawn endgame maybe? But no, I mean, he's just in time. I'm actually having a worse pawn structure, to be honest, at the king's side. So I didn't find it. In the end, I decided just to take on b4 and play queen d4 and collect the pawn on b4. So what happened later? I gave this position to my partner of the podcast, Wojciech Miranda. We were having the episode 4 of the podcast yesterday, and I asked him to solve this position. He had major trouble finding the win, even though, I told him there's a win. During the game, I felt there's a win, but I was not sure. I told him there's a win. And he was also looking at his queen d4, queen e4, queen e3, and could not easily find it. And finally, he did figure it out. That it's rook c2 and threading with a mate. And now after rook f2, there's the stunning move. Shut the queen from the game with c5. Wow. You know, so the queen a7 is shut from the game. I'll leave the rook on c2 under attack. The pawn on f7 is still protected by the queen. That's why it has to stay on d5. And after the capture on c2, there's a check. Another check. So I'm winning the pawn on b4, but first I need to give a lot of checks to centralize my queen. Like check, check, and this is a winning queen endgame. He cannot force perpetual check. I will always have the king, and his b pawn is marching forward, and his own king is too weak, and I'm going to find the proper checks to promote my b pawn. Yeah, I mean, you know what's interesting? I saw the idea of c5. I saw that I can leave the rook on c2 hanging, but it just didn't register for some reason. I saw it. Like, there's some moments when I can play c5, shut the queen from the game, but I didn't compute 2 plus 2 is 4. So I decided to take the pawn, and I gave a check. And before grabbing the pawn, I gave a check on e4 first. The reason was that if I take on b4, gives a check here, and I just didn't see how I can easily protect the pawn on f7. I just didn't like this. So I cannot give any checks to the king. And if I play like this, he plays queen f2, and maybe I give a check, and he goes here. And I still have some problems to defend the pawn. My rook on c5 is under attack as well. So I didn't see how. Maybe some queen d5 is queen f6. Yeah, so I don't think white here is risking with anything. So what I decided to do, I gave a check on e4 first, with the idea that after queen b4 and queen c3, I will have queen d4 check against the king on g1. And I thought if he takes on c3, which I felt that this is the best move for white to go to the rook endgame, I have an extra pawn, and probably I will be having very good practical chances to score a win. Do you know what the engine says? Just a draw. Just a draw. Like, okay, king f2 activating the king, rook f2, king f3 takes it, rook c1, the pawn on c7 is hanging, probably is not very good. But yeah, engine says it's just a draw. Basically, you do whatever you want with white. I think humans, they're gonna slightly disagree. And by the way, here, one funny engine line was even after g4, rook f2, even this is a draw. Cutting off the king, and some engine says even this is a draw. To be honest, I find it insane. I thought with the king cut off and having a c pawn rolling forward, it's definitely a win. No. Engine says it's just a draw. My opponent also felt like that, and he decided to keep the queens on the board. So I gave a check. Rook f2 was a very good move. And now I realized I have major difficulties to find the next move, because suddenly he's threatening to play queen d7. I cannot exploit the pin here. There's also a queen g4 check, and queen d7 is a threat. And if I play, let's say, h5, which was my original idea, I wanted somehow centralize the queen. Let's say put the rook on d5, c5, maybe queen d4, trade the queens, go to the rook endgame and show my technique. He suddenly goes here, and I have very big difficulties to defend the pawn. Because after queen e6, I saw he can play rook f7 and queen d4. It's just a draw. So I spent quite a bit of time here, and I decided I have nothing better than to play queen e6, stopping queen g4, stopping queen d7, and after queen d4, again, queen e5 is going to be queen g4. I have to go to the queen endgame. I have nothing else. I was not very happy about it, but I had no choice. Rook e2, f6, rook e5, and I figured out my best chance is to create two passed pawns. So I played f takes on e5. Of course, I felt the position most likely is drawish, especially with the queen endgame where there's a lot of perpetual checks, but I have no choice. And I thought he has to go queen e4. So after queen e4, he's blocking my pawn. And I had a couple of ideas, like I could go with queen b6, queen d4, and start to push those c-pawn. And maybe there will be moments when I can sacrifice the pawn on h7, like this. And I was definitely going to go here. Like he will play h4, I will play c4, c3, etc. He will play h5. I felt I have no risk here whatsoever. My pawns are the ones that are a bit faster. And I was willing to do it. Another idea was to play immediately c5 and advance the pawn and try to somehow make a progress here, but engine says there's no progress. Ultimately, your king is too weak. So I was thinking about pushing the c pawn forward and then give up the pawn on h7 and marching with the king somehow here and try to push the c pawn forward. But my opponent played the wrong idea. He played queen d8. So that's the interesting part. Like, white had a choice to be active or passive. So queen e4 is passive. He's defending the pawn. And queen d8 is the active move. But it's the wrong idea. So what I first did, I decided to improve my queen. I gave a check. I gave a check. He has multiple moves, of course. He played here. I play king f7. I'm dominating the queen. And here he played the fateful move queen h8. Which again feels very logical. He's killing 2 pawns at the same time. But he's completely shutting the queen from the game. So I gave a check. I gave a check. And another check. And another check. So what I wanted to do to get the queen on e4 with a tempi. So that I can finally advance my c pawn. King h3, I gave one more check just in case to take away his access to the c8 square. And I play king e7. Already here, I was thinking probably at some point I'm going to give up the pawn on h7. If I have to. Queen b8, again I centralize the queen. King d7. Gave me a check. Here. And, you know, there's a major rule in queen endgames. When you're not sure, always centralize your pieces. Like, I know this is a rule for not maybe rook endgames, but queen endgames, absolutely. The queen has to be centralized. I have to push forward these c pawns. And if you are going to be jealous, not jealous, but greedy and not be willing to give up the pawn on h7, you cannot win the game. Like king d6, I need to watch out for perpetuals. Like check, here, check, here, some diagonal checks, like here and check. You cannot win this. So there's a very good chance you will get a perpetual check. So I decided that I need to centralize the queen. There's less chance for him to give a perpetual check, even if it cost me the h-pawn. The key went here. I played c5, check, here, and queen h7, which probably already is a decisive mistake. But to be honest, there's no perpetual check and my pawns are rolling forward. So I go here. It's not a race. I'm faster. I'm simply faster. And the point is he could have played g4 because after queen d3 I traded queens and his king is not in the so-called square. You can see my d-pawn is rolling forward. I can stop his g-pawn. So he played check here, g4, c3, and I'm just faster. And this is how the game finished. Yeah, he played queen h7. I gave a check. Again, he could have played king g2. It's going to be queen e4, traded queens. The c-pawn is advancing. And yeah, I just moved the other pawn as well. He gave me a couple of spy checks. I'm moving forward. He tried to move his own pawn. Another check. Another e-pawn goes forward. And finally, yeah, he played g7. I calculated very quickly. I can just grab the pawn. There's no perpetual check. What was I calculating here? I think it was here. And he's running out of checks. No, wait, what was it? No, I think it queen h4, there was queen f6. Yeah, there was just queen f6, and he's running out of checks. And after queen d8, queen d5, king goes here, check here. There's no check on d7. So that's what I saw. And finally, he did play h4, trying to go for some stalemate tricks like queen f7. Here you see the kings in the stalemate, and after queen d5, I avoided and forced him to resign. So it was a very exciting game, to be honest. You know, I misplayed the opening in the very beginning. I was looking for a fight. I tried to avoid the symmetrical pawn structure because I thought he's going to figure it out. I complicated stuff, but apparently a bit too much. So I'll have to revisit this particular line because it might repeat. Yeah, that's it. I'm finishing my video right here. If you liked my content, if you liked this video, please press like and leave a comment. It allows me to increase the visibility of my videos and post your thoughts about the Catalan. What do you think about this d-Neiksans c4 line? Or you're playing the closed positions. By the way, also news that I maybe didn't announce in the previous video. I would like to thank all of the subscribers who allowed me to reach the 20,000 followers on YouTube, which is quite a historic mark. I'm very, very grateful to you. Thank you. Thank you a lot. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm again going to use the opportunity to mention that I have an open Patreon page. It's been running since last September, and this is usually the place where I'm posting my inside stories from the travels, more photos, by the way, from the French League. You're going to find it there. And yeah, it was fun, and I intend to continue. So once again, if you're not yet a sub of this channel, please press subscribe, and I wish you a great day. Take care.